Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 2 of Vinny, that's you, buddy, makes the Hall of Fame case for ...
So
who's it for, buddy?
Well, this time we had a lot of success last time with Charles Foss. So I decided, you know what? Why don't I do it on my most wanted guy for baseball? And before I tell you who it is, Kirk, I want to ask you a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Who do you want most out of anyone for baseball?
Well, it's not the guy you're talking about.
Yeah, I want to ask you first before I get to it.
Okay, the guy I want personally more than anyone else is oh God, there's actually like 2 people that I'm pretty passionate about.
Let me guess, Pete Rose and Joe Jackson.
No, well, yes, Pete Rose and Joe Jackson based on what I have for the list, but in terms of actual passion for those who I think that really have a good shot. Oh God, you sort of threw me off there, man.
I'm doing that because I want to get to a point that I say, what if I told you that my most wanted guy goes back way before you were born, way before I was born, way before your parents were born, your grandparents were born, and maybe, just maybe, before your great-grandparents were born.
Oh, can I make my answer before now?
Yes.
Dick
Go right
Allen.
ahead.
Dick Allen right now is somebody I'm very passionate about. Pete Rose, of course, but Dick Allen is somebody who
definitely
I'm super passionate about. But back to your initial thing, yeah, because this is your show. This ain't my show.
I know. I'm just trying to get my point while bouncing off yours.
Yeah,
but mine is not Dick Allen. It is not Pete Rose, and it's surprisingly also not Joe Jackson. The guy's name goes back to literally the founding of baseball itself. And the man's name is Daniel Lucius Adams, but more better known by most people as Doc Adams. And no, that's not because of Julius Erving or Doc Rivers. No, this guy was actually a physician. He literally just did baseball in his spare time.
Vinny, it's when you sort of pitched this to me, I was a bit familiar with him, more so with Charles Foss, who you talked about in episode 1. And Adams is far more on the radar of the Baseball Hall of Fame committee because he was nominated in 2016 in the pre-integration.
It was the early baseball committee put on there over 200 years after that he was born. Just saying, I gotta take a little
right, but somebody who has, with all due respect to Mr. Follis, somebody who is probably has a better shot at this point.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I would agree. Like, as much as I adore Charles Follis, Doc Adams is someone that's up for induction this year, and even though he was up for induction in 2016, it was out of 16 people. And 10 people said yes.
How did he do on that, by the way?
There's a 16-person panel, and if you have 12 votes, you advance. He got 10 yes votes, which means that there were 6 people that looked at his resume and said, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
But 10 out of 16, that's not too bad considering.
Yeah, well, it's not bad, but it's just not good enough.
No, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, there are quite a few people on that exact same ballot who didn't even get to 10. Some got 0. If I understand correctly, and you can correct me on this, so if you didn't get a certain amount, they didn't even tell you how many votes you got.
No, because I think it was like if you had less than 3, they don't even tell you.
Right. So this is one of those people that you're hyper passionate about that has a shot, but let's tell all the people here who are listening why this man belongs here. I'll just, before you do that, if I could, like just as a kid, like you grow up, or this is how I grew up anyway, hearing about Abner Doubleday and then realizing much years later that he wasn't exactly the icon that we learned about. With Adams, he really was. And I'm going to leave this for you to sort of explain.
When
to
you
people
think of
why.
the founders of baseball, you think of someone like Henry Chadwick, you think of someone like Alexander Cartwright, and of course, you think of people like Doc Adams. Abner Doubleday, that story's a farce. That was really only done just to get up American, exceptionalism with the idea of baseball. Like the idea that baseball is founded in Cooperstown, New York is a total sham. In reality, it was founded because of immigrants coming from Western and Central Europe in the early to mid 1800s. They brought, rounds and cricket with them, but eventually over time, these little factions would change up a little bit and they would become known as baseball, as we know of.
Right.
That is how baseball started. So if anyone says about Cooperstown, that's just fake. That's fake news. It's legitimate fake news, as Trump would say.
Right.
But yeah, it was fake news. Baseball actually started in, around the 1830s, 1840s, but it evolved over time.
Mhm.
But one of the people that made baseball what it was Doc Adams. This was a guy that liked the game of rounds, and when it became that of baseball,
Wait, was it rounds or rounders?
it was rounds, rounders. It was called either or, rounds,
Okay, all right.
rounders. It was interchangeable. He played rounds and of course baseball. This is some fun, just for exercise. That's all he really used it for early on. He joined the New York Baseball Club, and then eventually he became a part of the New York Knickerbockers, not the Knicks, but it's the team that the Knicks would later get their name from. The Knickerbockers, the Knicks. That's what it comes from. It comes from that old baseball team formed in 1845 by Alexander Cartwright, who is a part of the Baseball Hall of Fame, inducted in 1939. But it was with merchants, lawyers, bank. These were guys that didn't use baseball as their main profession. These were people that played baseball as just a hobby. Again, just as something for exercise.
So
But
with Adams, though, Adams wasn't a player, though, correct?
no, actually, he was a player. In fact,
It
he
was,
played every
okay.
position. Actually, outside of pitcher, he played everywhere.
Okay.
He literally played everywhere. He even, invented some positions,
All
actually.
right. So what did he invent then, Vin?
Well, first I want to tell you about why he invented this. You see, the
Okay.
balls back then didn't travel as far. So what he decided to do was, hey, you know what? I'm going to be right here to be a short fielder, to be the shortstop for these pitchers that are thrown outside. And that's how the name happened. It's literally because of him.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's the guy that he literally invented the shortstop position because of that. And he was also the guy that helped mass produce baseballs. And because the baseballs were taught a certain way based on his teaching from an old Scottish saddler in the
So when
area.
you say like mass produced baseball, we're talking about the actual ball.
Yes, he's the reason why the sting, that's because of him. He's
Okay.
literally the reason why the baseball is stitched a certain way.
Okay.
And because the balls went a bit further, he decided to move the shortstop position in between second base and third base. That's why the dimensions are the way they are. Also, speaking of dimensions, when he became one of the first people he became the big head of rule changes. I have it all right here.
Yeah, please.
That Adams served an executive for his team as well as the vice president from 1846, and he would be there until the early 1860s. But during this time, he helped start the very first ever baseball club. Entire baseball league, first one ever. He's the guy that started it.
So he created the National League.
He created the National League.
Okay.
Yes, what he did it was called the National Association of Baseball Players. That was the first ever governing body of baseball. He created that, and he was the first ever president. He was the guy that literally led the whole charge. And when he was put there, he was the presiding officer of the rules. And as the presiding officer of the rules, he was the person that helped set forth legislation and ideas of baseball. I'm going to tell you some ideas for rules of baseball that you
Yeah,
might
please.
know
Yeah, definitely.
of. You might hear my dog in the back. Okay. And these are not like archaic rules. These are probably things you probably know of. Baseball having 9 men on each side of the field. That's him. Baseball's dimensions. That's him. Baseball be 9 innings. That's him. Um, Having the most amount of runs at the end of the game leads you to a win. That's him. And also flyouts. That's also him.
Right.
And these are not very complex things. These aren't like intense sabermetrics. These aren't, things that are very archaic that the diehard fan could only know. This is like some of those basic primitive information that anyone that doesn't even know about the game that much would understand.
Mm-hmm.
That is how important Doc Adams is. In my personal opinion, and I'm very, very blatant here, if you do not want Doc Adams in the Hall of Fame, you do not care about baseball and you want to see them deliberately ignored.
All right. So like to Doc Adams, as like unlike Charles Halls, who we talked about last time, is somebody who is on a radar
Yes.
for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Somebody who I'll admit I wasn't that familiar with until you brought that up to me a little bit before, because he was nominated before, like in the 2016. What do you think his chances are going forward?
I think this is, if it's because the way that baseball has it, like outside, if he doesn't make it this year, he has to wait another 10 years. And I don't want to wait that long.
Was it 10 years at this point now?
I'm not joking. Like the way that they have set it up, like in order for these early 1800 people to get inducted, they have to get inducted this year or else they'll have to wait another decade. I'm not even joking. That's how the rotation is up until 2035, which is archaic in my opinion. And honestly, if it wasn't for the committee and the hall not knowing how Zoom worked, he would have been, I personally believe he would have been inducted last year. He would have at least been nominated last year, but they thought that using Zoom would taint the pureness and the sacredness of that institution that people openly trash and insult online nonstop. Yeah, some sacred organization you got there.
From what you've researched, are there people from his family that are pushing for this, or you're not sure?
Well, I can tell you right away. A lot of people didn't know much about Doc Adams for a very long time until after the Mets were purchased by a descendant of Doubleday, Nelson Doubleday Jr. And it led to his great-great-grandson, Nathan Adams Downey, to literally set the record straight and send all these documents proving every single one of the things I told you to the New York Times. And they would publish it. And it's been 40 years. And John Thorne has written an amazing piece on him that I recommend you check it out.
All right. So how do we find that? From
just go to just type in John Thorne, Doc Adams online. They'll be the first thing that pops up.
All right, yeah. All right, continue.
He's also, Doc Adams himself is someone that I believe that, he's just the number one guy in my eyes. Like, everyone else on that guy, I think the most outside of him was like someone, I forgot who, but like 5 or 6 votes. Adams is by far the leader. And another reason why I really am passionate about him is because, like, I'm not the only one. If you think I'm passionate, there's a guy out there, I forgot his name, who literally did an entire website dedicated to Doc Adams and why he should be in the Hall of Fame. Literally an entire meticulously made website that is really well run. It has as much detail as possible, even more detail than I'm telling you right now, about his life, where he grew up, why he is the way he is, why he thought the way he was, also the accomplishments he had, how he was a player, how he was as a contributor, everything. It just tells you, it just hones into the idea that this man, the Hall of Fame, is not given credibility in their eyes until this man is recognized. And I know people say that for guys that they won, but in this in particular, it feels that the history of baseball is neglected and ignored if you do not induct
Okay.
him.
So why do you think that he's been forgotten?
Because he was born in the 1800s, honestly. Because a lot of people
Sure,
don't.
but others have. So like,
That's
why
true.
him?
Why him? Well, it's because he wasn't a very flashy guy back then. A lot of people just thought it was old Doubleday, and they also talk about his contemporaries like Cartwright and Chadwick because they were much more upfront.
Yeah,
But
because
Adam,
that's how I was taught in terms of like my initial baseball knowledge.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what a lot of people know. But
Yeah.
Adams's family set the record straight, and many people argue that in many cases Adams was probably more influential in the game than Chadwick or Cartwright potentially. But you just never really hear about him because this was not his main profession. This was something he did as a side hustle, basically.
So
And
what was his main profession?
he was a doctor. I mean, he's not called Doc by accident.
Okay.
He was a guy that practiced medicine, but then after he finished baseball in the medical facility, he went up to Connecticut where he was a part of a bank. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head, but he was there, and it was New Haven. He died in 1899, and in New
Right.
Haven, Connecticut, it's where he's buried to this day in Evergreen Cemetery with his wife. So if you were to ever go over to New Haven Cemetery, he's probably there right now, and tell him Vinny sent you.
All right. So you think it's like basically like his family just didn't sort of like push the whole, I want to say myth because there is something to that, but I don't know. What do you think, Vin?
I think the big reason why is because they just didn't really think about it that much. They were very humble about where they were. They didn't really want to push it up front. And also because he was a bit more in the shadows compared to some other guys, that's kind of what led to a lot of people not really talking about him. Plus, compared to like other generations afterwards, there's not as much documented evidence of that time, but we do have documented evidence in this situation. I mean, my understanding is a big reason why there's no currently pre-NFL guys is because not enough information. I think there's a lot of information for induction for those pre-NFL guys, but a lot of people others say otherwise. Not a lot, just a couple people that know their stuff.
So Baseball Reference does a pretty good job talking about who he is. Is there any other sites that people who might be interested in what you've just discussed that they can sort of like take a look at?
There's a few guys like, I forget his name online, but unlike football, baseball's fan base is pretty good about talking about the 1800s history. With football, you'll find like a couple off the top of your head that you'd probably know. But for baseball, you have a decent amount of people that actually do talk about 1800s baseball. And in fact, like, the Society of American Baseball Research, baseball actually has head researchers from that era, from the 19th century. Football has like next to no one. But for baseball, there's a lot of that time. And also baseball is an older sport than football. So because of that, and because baseball is also a game that teaches more about their history compared to football, which many times kind of ignores their history. Because of this, baseball that's the reason why you're more likely to see it. So that's also another reason why I think it's more likelier for Adams compared to someone like Follis is because of just the culture of baseball compared to football.
Okay. So for people who like your last sort of like push for Mr. Adams, what can you sort of like say here, Vinny?
Well, I can tell you right away that I was so passionate about Doc Adams that I did an entire paper for my baseball history class on the man.
Can people see that paper?
Or? I can push it up if you want, but I did send it to a couple people. They really, really liked it. And these were people that were into researching 1800s baseball, and they really supported the idea. And the idea, I honed in the idea over and over again. And I'm going to just say the final paragraph for Doc Adams, because I think this sums it up immediately. I said, Adams' imprint on baseball is felt by millions around the globe, even now over a century after his death. When you see someone catch a fly ball, to record it out, that is the legacy of Doc Adams at work. When you look at your scoreboard and see 9 innings in the game, that is also the legacy of Doc Adams. When you look around a baseball diamond and see the distance from base to base, that too is a legacy of Doc Adams. And finally, when you hold a baseball in your hand and observe the dozens of stitches around into the leather of the ball, that too is a legacy and the result of the work of one of the founding fathers of America's pastime, Daniel Lucius Adams. Induct the man this in the coming months. If not, I'll be extremely distraught, and I will find that pretty insulting if they actually end up not doing
All right,
it. But they
awesome.
better. They have to. They really have to. With Charles Follis, I can understand it, even though I strongly disagree with it. I understand. With Doc Adams, I'll be furious. You got to induct Doc Adams. You have to. I don't want to wait another decade of this.
All right, well, fair enough. At least you can wait another decade.
That is true.
I'm older than dirt, so I can't. So, all right. Thanks so much, Vinny, and everyone. We're gonna have Vinny back pretty soon.
Yes. Part 3 is going to go back to football, and
Oh, okay. Who's gonna be back for football? Because I don't know. Like, it's all about you. So,
I mean, yeah, it's going to be football season, and I'm going to celebrate it by covering someone from football. And those that know me pretty well will like who I choose.
all right, awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not positive who I think it is. I have an idea, but I'm looking forward to it. So, thank you all so much. And there's going to be a lot more coming from us at notinhalloffame.com. Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe, guys. Good luck.